Severe thunderstorm warnings across multiple states, a developing tropical low in the Coral Sea, and the remnants of ex-tropical cyclone Koji potentially reforming off the Western Australian coast. That the situation right now across Australia, and worth paying close attention to. Let start with what happening on the ground, because conditions right now tell the story of what coming. Up in far north Queensland, places like Mount Carbine are sitting at 34 degrees with 80% humidity. The heat is oppressive. People are reporting it's hard to breathe out there. That's not an exaggeration. When you combine that temperature with that level of moisture in the air, you re-looking at conditions that make outdoor work genuinely difficult. If you in the tropics right now, you already know what I am talking about. Mowing the grass becomes an endurance event. And to make matters worse, there are swarms of biting black flies about. Not pleasant conditions by any measure. The humidity extends right down through North Queensland. Townsville, Cairns and surrounding areas are all copping it. This is peak wet season doing what peak wet season does. The overnight minimums aren't dropping below 27 degrees in some spots, which means there's no relief even at night. Some people are finding their tiled floors wet from condensation. That's how much moisture is sitting in the atmosphere. Compare that to what's happening further south. In Carcoar, New South Wales, they hit 35 degrees yesterday, but that dry heat. Different beast entirely. And down in Tasmania, conditions are cool and dry. Launceston hasn't seen decent rain for a while. That north-south contrast is significant, and it explains a lot about what the weather systems are doing right now. Now, here what's driving all of this. We've got a very active monsoon trough sitting across northern Australia. The remnants of ex-tropical cyclone Koji are now positioned over far northwestern Queensland, and they rehooking into moisture from the Gulf of Carpentaria. This is pumping tropical air right across the northern half of the country, which is why humidity levels are through the roof from Darwin right through to Cairns. At the same time, we've got a low pressure trough digging deep into New South Wales from the interior. This is drawing warm, unstable air towards the coast. And when that warm air meets the moisture being funneled in from the northeast, you get the perfect recipe for severe thunderstorm development. Let's break this down state by state, because each region has a different story over the next few days. Starting with Queensland. Today, Thursday the 15th, is actually relatively quiet on the severe thunderstorm front for southeast Queensland. Brisbane, the Gold Coast, the Sunshine Coast, you are looking at a fairly dry day, maybe one or two isolated thunderstorms out towards the Darling Downs and around Goondiwindi, but nothing widespread. The action today is further west. Around Charleville, Windora and Quilpie, there's a chance of stronger thunderstorms this afternoon. The Bureau of Meteorology has already issued severe thunderstorm warnings for parts of Western Queensland earlier today. Heavy rainfall and strong wind gusts are the main concerns in these storms. Now, the real question everyone's asking in southeast Queensland is this: when are we getting decent rain? The dams need it. Logan City hasn't seen much for ages, and I understand that frustration. You've been watching storm after storm roll through other parts of the state while your gauge sits empty. Here is the honest assessment. Friday and Saturday do offer some thunderstorm potential for southeast Queensland, but it is not a certainty. The convective available potential energy, that the fuel that powers thunderstorms, is sitting around 1,000 to 1,500 joules per kilogram. That's enough to get storms going, but it's not through the roof. When you're re-teetering around that 1,000 mark, some days you get storms, some days you don't. Friday afternoon looks like the better chance. There's a low pressure system and associated trough setting up across the Granite Belt and the Darling Downs. Dew points are pushing up towards 24 or 25 degrees, which means there's moisture available. If storms do fire, expect the stronger ones to be concentrated around the Darling Downs, the Scenic Rim and potentially into the Lockyer Valley. Saturday brings a southeasterly change up the coast. Now, anyone who has been around southeast Queensland for a while knows that southeasterly changes can trigger some significant thunderstorms. Think back to November 24th last year. Those monster storms that ripped through Brisbane were triggered by a strong southeasterly change. But here, the catch. This weekend, change is weak. We re-talking wind gusts of 30 to 40 kilometres per hour compared to the 50 to 60 UD want for a proper trigger. So while there's convective energy available on Saturday, the trigger mechanism is NT ideal. Ultra-high-end severe thunderstorms are probably off the table, but some moderate to strong storms with large hail, damaging winds and heavy rainfall remain possible. After Sunday, conditions dry out across southeast Queensland. The next potential wet period isn't until around Australia Day, the 26th of January. We'll be watching that window closely, but don't expect anything dramatic between now and then. For those up in far north Queensland and the Cape York Peninsula, the picture is completely different. You are looking at a significant uptick in rainfall and moisture from around the 20th of January onwards. Here is why. The monsoon trough is expected to strengthen as the remnants of ex-tropical cyclone Koji track westward. This will increase convergence along the trough line, and we are expecting a broad area of low pressure to develop offshore from the Cape York Peninsula sometime between the 20th and 23rd of January. This system is forecast to track generally southward, bringing heavy rainfall to the far northern coast. I am expecting a 2 to 3 day wet period across Cape York. Cairns and areas further south could see some of this rain, but there's still significant uncertainty in the models. They re-flip-flopping on exactly how much moisture will push south. If you re-north of Cairns, prepare for a wet period. If you re-south of Cairns, remain watchful but don't bank on significant rainfall just yet. The forecast will become clearer over the next few days. Shifting focus to New South Wales now, and this is where things get properly interesting. Today and tomorrow are going to be active days on the thunderstorm front. Right now, as I'm putting this together, there are thunderstorms developing inland from the central coast north of Newcastle into the Barrington Tops and also around Port Macquarie, Kempsey and Coffs Harbour. But the main event today is further south, around and to the north of the Australian Capital Territory. This is genuinely a perfect storm setup. You've got moisture coming in from the northeast, which is unusual even for this time of year. That moisture is more tropical in nature, so it's, say, warm and humid. At the same time, there's a very strong low-pressure trough digging into New South Wales, drawing warm air from the interior towards the coast. When these elements collide, you get significant instability. The convective available potential energy is sitting around 1,500 joules per kilogram through this region. That's enough for high-end severe thunderstorm development. What does that mean in practical terms? We're re-talking about the risk of large hailstones potentially reaching 5 centimetres or larger in the strongest storms. Damaging to locally destructive wind gusts are possible, along with heavy to intense rainfall. If you've got cars parked outside in southern New South Wales today, consider putting them under cover if you can. Dew points through the New South Wales southeast coast are pushing into the low 20s. That is unusual for this region and indicates just how much moisture is available for these storms to tap into. The other significant weather event for New South Wales is the rainfall expected through Friday and into Saturday. A low-pressure system is developing in the Tasman Sea and it's going to track up the New South Wales coastline. The southern flank of this low will funnel heavy rainfall ashore. Here's the expected timeline. Rainfall begins increasing through the Illawarra and the southeast coast forecast districts from around lunchtime Friday. This area, roughly from Bega up to Wollongong, will see the initial heavy falls. Then, as the low tracks northward, the rainfall band will shift up the coast. Sydney eastern suburbs are in line for falls between 100 and 150 millimetres. The western suburbs will see less, probably 30 to 50 millimetres. North of Tarry and Foster, rainfall accumulations drop off significantly as the low is forecast to be dragged back out into the Tasman. Now, I've seen some wild predictions floating around suggesting 500 or 600 millimetres from this system. Let me be clear. That S, not going to happen. Falls between 150 to 250 millimetres are realistic for the heaviest hit areas on the southeast coast. Isolated falls approaching 400 millimetres are possible if rain persists over both Friday and Saturday. But 600 or 700 millimetres over 4 days, that would require conditions we're simply not seeing in the models. The southeast coast needs the rain, no question, but 600 millimetres would cause serious flooding problems. Fortunately, that extreme scenario isn't on the cards. Sea surface temperatures offshore from New South Wales are running around 21 to 24 degrees. That's warmer than average and means there's plenty of moisture available for evaporation. This is why we can confidently expect decent rainfall totals without reaching catastrophic levels. For Victoria, conditions are much quieter. There is some shower and thunderstorm activity pushing through the Bass Strait today, and Melbourne may see some isolated showers through the weekend. But compared to what S happening in Queensland and New South Wales, Victoria is getting off lightly this week. Now let S talk about the tropical systems, because this is where the longer range forecast gets particularly important. First, the remnants of ex-tropical cyclone Koji. After making landfall as a powerful system in North Queensland, Koji has weakened and is now tracking across the Gulf country. Over the next few days, it will cross into the Northern Territory. As it does so, expect an increase in shower and thunderstorm activity around Darwin. Saturday and Sunday look wet for the top end with heavy rainfall likely. This is because the system will be tapping into Timor Sea moisture as it regenerates. And here is the key point. The models are indicating that these remnants could reform into a tropical cyclone once they track back out into the Indian Ocean. The forecast path takes the system along the Gulf of Carpentaria coastline across the Kimberley and then offshore from Western Australia sometime around the 20th to 22nd of January. If this reformation occurs, and the models are increasingly confident that it will, Western Australia could be looking at a significant tropical cyclone threat by the end of next week. Let me explain why this matters. Sea surface temperatures offshore from Western Australia are extremely warm right now. We're talking 30 to 31 degrees, pushing 32 close to shore. That S exceptional. There's enormous energy available for a tropical cyclone to intensify rapidly. Additionally, the jet stream has shifted well south because we're now into mid-January. In November and December, the jet stream sits over the Gascoyne and Pilbara regions, which helps to tear apart developing tropical systems. But by January, it's moved south over the wheat belt, leaving a much more favourable environment for cyclone development. The Access model and the European model are now showing increasing agreement that this reformed system could become a significant tropical cyclone. If it does develop and if it tracks close to the coast, places like Broome, Port Hedland, Karratha and Onslow could be in the firing line by late next week, potentially around Australia Day. I am not putting anyone under formal watch or warning yet. There is too much uncertainty at this stage. But if you're in the Pilbara or Kimberley regions, start paying close attention to the forecast from this weekend onwards. By Sunday or Monday, we should have much clearer guidance on whether this system will threaten the coast and where exactly it might track. No need to panic, no need to rush out and strip the supermarket shelves, but awareness is important. Start thinking about your cyclone plan. Know where your important documents are. Make sure your emergency kit is stocked. These are sensible preparations regardless of whether this system eventuates. There's also a second area of low pressure developing in the Coral Sea out towards New Caledonia and Vanuatu. This one has the potential to become a tropical cyclone early next week, but it is forecast to track away from Australia towards Norfolk Island and New Zealand. No Australian impacts are expected from this system, so let S summarise the practical advice for the next week. For southeast Queensland, keep an eye on the sky Friday and Saturday. Thunderstorms are possible but not certain. Don T expects significant rainfall totals to fill your tanks. The next decent wet period probably isn't until late January around Australia Australia Day. For North Queensland and Cape York, prepare for a wet period from around the 20th of January. Heavy rainfall is likely, though exact totals remain uncertain. Make sure your gutters are clear and you've got essentials stocked in case roads become impassable. For New South Wales, today and tomorrow are severe thunderstorm days, particularly through the southern half of the state. If you are around the ACT, Southern Highlands or Illawarra region, take hail warnings seriously. Put cars under cover if possible. Friday and Saturday bring heavy coastal rainfall from a Tasman low. The southeast coast will see the heaviest falls. Sydney should prepare for wet weather through the weekend. For Western Australia, watch the forecast closely from this weekend. The reformed remnants of ex-tropical cyclone Koji could develop into a significant system threatening the Pilbara coast by late next week. No action required yet, but stay informed. For the top end and Northern Territory, expect wet conditions Saturday and Sunday as the monsoon trough strengthens and the Koji remnants track through. For Victoria and South Australia, relatively quiet conditions this week. Some isolated showers possible, but nothing significant on the radar. For Tasmania, conditions remain cool and dry. Those waiting for rain in the north will need to keep waiting a bit longer. One final note on the humidity situation in the tropics. If you are dealing with these oppressive conditions in North Queensland, limit your outdoor activity during the heat of the day. Check on elderly neighbours and mates who might be struggling. Make sure pets and livestock have access to shade and water. This kind of sustained heat and humidity is genuinely dangerous, particularly for those with underlying health conditions. The wet season is now in full swing. This is what January in tropical Australia looks like. Multiple systems developing, moisture everywhere, and the constant need to stay across the forecast. We're going to see more activity over the coming weeks as the monsoon continues its active phase. Stay informed. Check the Bureau of Meteorology for the official warnings and forecasts, and take sensible precautions based on your local conditions that assess the situation as it stands. Conditions across the country are about to shift significantly over the next week, and there is a lot to keep track of. Whether you're re-sweating it out in the tropics, watching the storm clouds build in New South Wales, or keeping one eye on the Indian Ocean from Western Australia, being prepared and staying informed is the key. The weather doesn't care about our plans. All we can do is understand what is coming and respond sensibly. And